Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So in a surprising turn of events, Oxygen team dropped Oxygen 6.0 beta 1. And this came as a surprise for a lot of people. It came as a surprise for me. I was excited when I heard the news. I was looking forward to seeing what this holds for the Oxygen users. As a lot of you know, I've been a serious proponent of Oxygen Builder. I love Oxygen Builder because it's the first builder that made me feel like, I'm using a truly professional tool. So when Oxygen Builder became legacy, it wasn't really a good news and a lot of new builders began to pop up. Let's take a look at Oxygen 6.0 and see what it has. So the first thing is that Oxygen 6.0 is built on the same core engine as Breakdance Builder. A lot of us know what Breakdance Builder is. So what does that mean? It means that the Oxygen Builder used the same code base as Breakdance and then modified it to give what we know as Oxygen 6. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, you're going to decide at the end of this video. One of the advantages that was touted as why this is a good thing is updates can come up really quickly, and things that are done in Breakdance that are really nice and you would love to see in Oxygen can easily be moved or ported to Oxygen easily without having to do the work twice. So I'm gonna just go right into the Oxygen Builder interface and let's see what it looks like. First of all, I've created a page. I've installed Oxygen, which is still a plugin as usual. So right now only Oxygen is installed. Now when you get Oxygen, you get Breakdance element for Oxygen, you get Breakdance WooCommerce for Oxygen, and you get a third one, Breakdance forms for Oxygen. So I've created a new page and I've had time to take a look at this because it's a brand new thing. So see, it opens really quick. It just a few seconds. I didn't even expect it to come up and it's already up. So the first thing I noticed was the interface was completely different. Actually, this is not what I was expecting. I thought it would have some similarities with the previous Oxygen. So I kept moving my cursor around, trying to figure out what is this. I couldn't figure it out, And the first thing that came to my mind was, where are the tooltips? I don't know what these are. So granted, as you use this, you will eventually start knowing. But I think that first of all, there should have been tooltips here to show me what it was, and I didn't have any. So I began to click in. Anyway, so let's just go ahead. Here you have the structure panel, which has been moved to the left by default, and I clicked and the elements panel is out. And the first thing that was like, wait a minute, am I sure I installed this properly? Where are my sections and divs? And I didn't see any. So it took me a while to like, okay, container, let's do this. And I clicked on the container and I noticed that I have here, okay, the sections, the tags. So you could actually change the tag. So I change it to a section and then let's do it. Styling it, you're not going to be able to style anything right away. So if you drop something on the page, unlike the way it was before, where you drop something and start styling right away, you are not able to style anything until you add a class. So I'm going to go ahead and add a class. All right. Now, before I continue, the best way, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do something with Oxygen as we're going to look at it, how the workflow is. And at the same time, we're going to look at the pros and the cons, the things I feel that are good and things I feel that are missing and should be looked at. So let's look at the workflow as we look at the new things. The first thing is, let's go ahead from the top to the bottom. So you look at here at the top right, top left corner, you're going to see the Oxygen icon where you can link to, it links to different things. It gives you a drop down that links to the dashboard, edit in WordPress preferences, which of course is very similar to Breakdance preferences. You have the UI settings. You could move the structure panel to the right and you just decide what is the variables and all that. I'm perfectly fine with the default. I like it, even though it's not what I'm used to, but I kind of like the arrangement. You have the plugin setting, which takes you to the back end, so which it takes you here, you put your license key and you do all the performance things. It's very similar also to Breakdance. It almost seems like you can't really talk about Oxygen 6 without mentioning Breakdance. So I've gone ahead to enable pages as post type, so I will be able to edit Breakdance. Edit pages with Oxygen. And then you have the tutorials and the documentation. You could just quickly go. There's just a couple of documentation. The documentation is fairly okay. It's good. I was able to find a couple of information that I needed here. They're going to update that, obviously. Now, so the next thing here, you have pages. So you could actually select pages that you want. And the good thing here is that you could filter them. You could filter by post type, by template if you have a lot of them, which is really good. And you could actually create new pages. You could create new post types. You could create posts. You could create new template right here. You don't need to get out of the builder, which I love very much. I love it so much. And then you have the breakpoints drop down. Of course, you have the ability to create custom breakpoints, which I really didn't explore when we went in here into the preferences. You can put custom fonts, you can add the font, or you could link external CSS. Overall, you could feel that the interface is really, really snappy. But what I would love to see is to just list out these things. I mean, just list it out here, the icons, I want it to be listed. That's what I would love. And I usually feel like when you're going down this route of building something which is already existed, you would really want to, get the input of users that have used your product, and before you make this public. I think it's a good move, but let's see things that could be, I think that this could have been done in a way that, I would love to have this listed out here, because every 2 clicks every single time. Granted, you can actually move this, okay, to move to the breakpoint, but it's still not as quick as jumping straight to the breakpoint you want. Now, I know that this was heavily inspired by Webflow, and Webflow uses similar, but sometimes things could just be better, I think. And so we come here, we have the undo and the redo, we have the history panel and the revision, and we have here, which would help, the tooltip would have helped, we have selectors. So you actually have to click in to see. So selectors has to do with where you have your classes, your pseudo classes and all that. And I've already created a class, because for you to be able to style something on the page, you must add a class, because Oxygen 6 does away with the ability to style things with IDs, and everything is going to be styled with classes. But the thing is this, when you put something on a page, you already have a class assigned to you automatically by Oxygen. So let's go ahead and add, let's say, a text here. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go to the front end, which of course opens in a new tab. And if I click on that text and inspect it, you could see that we have a text, and it has a class, actually 2 classes, Oxytext, with numbers, and Oxytext. But the thing is this comes without any pre-styling. That's the good thing about it, because you don't have to struggle with trying to overwrite the default styling, and any default styling that is here is based on the user agent. See, you can see here, it's based on the browser's default styling for that element, which is a good thing, but which makes me question, why do you have these classes and why are they here? Yeah, maybe there's a good reason for that, but at least I could understand why you will have Oxytext class, but why do you have Oxytext class 8112? And I think that is actually what is the unique ID sort of for that class. And I thought, okay, if you have that, then why can't I just start styling it away with that, since that is already available? But you can't. So you should add a class. So let me just say my heading, okay? And then of course it's not a heading, so, and you don't have that heading, so you actually have to change it here, and it becomes your H1. Now, if I have an H1 like that, and I have a heading class, how am I going to be able to, the first thing I was looking at, how do I style all my headings? Because you don't actually have a global style for all the headings. Now, since this is heavily inspired by Webflow, you could see that the way Webflow does it is that it gives you a class for all the HTML tags. So if you put a H1 there, Webflow gives you a default H1 class that applies to all the H1 you can add, that you're going to add on your page. It gives you a class for all the headings. So this class is already available for you, so that if you want to use this opportunity to style your H1s, you just do that once and for all. And then anytime you have an H1, it takes that class. You don't have to always add a class to it unless you want to add a different class to style it differently. So the question is, how do I style all my H1s? How do I style all my H2, like a global styling? How do I do that? I couldn't find it. Maybe there's a way, but it's not here. This is pure Oxygen. No elements for Breakdance and nothing. So with Oxygen, how do I do that? I couldn't find out how to do that, but that didn't stop me. It's not going to stop me from doing what I want to do. So now, so you have that. So I already have two classes here. And one of the things about the class is that, let's say I have this typography size and I want to give it 5 rem. Okay, let's say 4 rem. And the classes gives you the ability to, you can rename it easily, you can duplicate it. The beautiful thing about duplicating classes is that if you have, let's say, a group of, let's say, elements that you've created, and then you want to create similar elements, but you don't want it to have the same class, you could actually duplicate that class, and that class is going to have all the style you apply to it, and then you can make modification to the one you duplicated for another set of elements. So which is very good. And you could remove it and you could delete it from the, from the website. You could lock the class, then you could add the state. Oh, I love this implementation, I really like it. So I could just go in here and choose the hover and then do something and say, okay, my size is going to be 3 rem for the hover. So when I hover, of course, that's not a good way to do it. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and, so how do you remove this? Let me delete that hover. Yeah, you could delete that hover. So I like it that way, that you could actually add. So if you want to edit the hover, you just go and edit the hover and all the other pseudo states. Now you could create what is also called a nested selector. So if I have a heading and I want this heading to be for the hero, I want to give a special class to the one that is for the hero, and then I want to style it separately, probably give it a different color. Now this isn't working. Okay, so even on the front end, it's not giving me. Now see, another thing is that I've ended up opening 2 of this. So what I would have expected is that when I open it, you should just refresh this one that is already open. So what I noticed is that that class is not added. It's supposed to be like a combo class in Webflow. So where you add like a modifier class to an existing class. So if you go in and look at the selectors, you can see how it is represented, that this is hero is only it's only added to the heading. It's not available for use anywhere else except for the heading, which is a nice thing. This one thing that I've requested for in the Oxygen group way back. Yeah, so this is in August 2021, where I said it would be nice to have combo classes in Oxygen like in Webflow, where you have, funny enough, it's still heading that was used here. And there was a lot of discussion about that. And I think it's a good idea that I've implemented it, but it's not working in this case. So we need to make it work. Yeah, they need to make it work. Now, another thing with collections is that you could group these collections. For example, I could just create a set of classes, and then I say these are my utilities. Okay, utility classes. And then you could, so if I want to create a utility class, I want to add a class to this. For example, I want to say maybe border. Okay, border text or text border. And then I could actually, I think I could go there and then put that in my, this is default. I thought I created a utility section. I didn't, so I could call this my utility. So I have, you can actually, I think you can move. Can you move this? I don't know if you can move it. Yeah, you can move classes around, so I can move this to utility, and I can move is hero to that, I don't know, it's not working. You just can't. I think, okay, if I drop it there, does it work? I don't know if it works. You could from here, you could actually add your own, utility nested class. So I have a border text, then I can add is red, the red of the border as a sub, nested selector. So you could group your classes, and then you could actually download them as JSON files. Yeah, you could download them as JSON files. You could and then re-import it into another. you could import, you can actually import or export these selectors as a whole into another website. That means if you had a boilerplate or a site you're working on, you already have all this, then you can actually import or export this. And so this is really, really useful. Very nice to create a little framework of your own, import and export it between sites. So here you have CSS variables. You could add variables, you can add collections. So I could add variables. You could name it differently also. So I could just say, I could just call this global styles, or I could just say variables for heading. Then I could add another one. I could just say variable for spacing. I could add another one. I could say variable for colors. And then I can go ahead to add my variable. So I could just, for the font, I could just say H1, okay? And that will take what? H1 family or heading family. And then I could say, yeah, I want poppins. And then if I go here, let me save that. If I go down here and I go to my typography and I'm trying to get a font family going. So I could just come here and choose my H1 family, which is already declared as the CSS variables. And so I'm going to go ahead and add, maybe this is spacing. So spacing, you use unit. I'm going to say my section part Y, and I'm going to give it 5 rem. Of course, you could use calculated values, and then I can add another variable. I could just say my gutter, and this is going to be my 2 rem. Now, we really don't have section elements, so I could just create some spacing classes, and then I can add another one and just say my content gap. Now, these are CSS variables. So now the way it is designed is that you don't have to name it like variables. For example, you don't have to say -- container gap. No, don't do that. Just write it like, normally. And on the front end is going to give you the name. So I'm going to refresh this, and then if I go to the HTML tag, you can see that it's already giving me the right names with all the right syntax. Okay, so you don't have to do that. Just write it out normally and it's going to give you the right syntax. But then on an elements level, for example, on this text, I could have, if I have my variables here on the element level, you could have a local override. So I come here and then maybe I have another text and I say, okay, I don't want to use that font family. So I add a local override, and here you can choose the font family, and then you could select a different one. So I could say, okay, for this particular text, I want to use Inter. So if I save that, so it's going to use the same CSS variable, and then it's going to override. For example, so I have my font family here at the root level, but if I come here, I'm going to see that font family being overridden by a locally scoped variables on that text. And you can see this one uses Inter. So it is, I think I really love this feature. It's a nice feature. And you can actually create a new variable here. You have to choose from this. But if you go to the global variables, you can actually create an empty variable. So if I come here and I'm doing color, all right. So let's remove that. Let's go under color, and then I'll just say color. No, just write primary. I can leave it empty. All right, I don't need to add a value to it. If I leave it empty, it's really not going to show up. Okay, so if I leave it empty, you can see it's not showing up here. But if I come to the local and I want to add my color, primary color, I want to override it. I can override it to, let's say, red as a local variable. So if I go back to the front end, you can see it's still not showing because we didn't assign any value. But if I come here, you can see that primary has been assigned red as a locally scoped variable. So that's a really nice thing. This button here is supposed to be a preview button where you just preview what you're doing, but I see a UX problem here. You have this, meaning the same icons. So I don't think it's a good idea to have the same icon doing different things, So you have, this is supposed to be preview, but on the element level, this is animation. So this should not be, this needs to be changed. You need to do something different. Maybe a preview should be an eye icon or something. So you have the scrolling animation, the entrance animation, the sticky, and then you have your interactions. So if I can add an interaction, mouse enter, mouse leaves, scrolling to view, page loaded, page scroll. And if I choose any of that, and then you have the target, you could choose this element that you are currently, working on, a different CSS selector. Then you have different actions. You have show element height, add class, remove class, toggle class, set variable, set attribute. All these things, you could do them. Remove scroll to an element, focus, blur. Then you could actually run a JavaScript function and choose a target that you want. You have advanced to, run once. You can disable this interaction on a certain breakpoint, which I think is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And we have conditions, which is very similar to what we have in Breakdance. You could choose different conditions here. I'm going to delete that. So, yep, that's it. And of course, this is the content of the text, which can take HTML elements. 2, of course, everything is supported. Dynamic data is being supported. So that's the basics of what you have here. So to wrap it up, I'm going to just build something. Let's go back to the structure panel. So I want to build this. And then while we're building this, we're going to see the workflow. So I'm going to build a hero section. So to have a hero section, this has a width of a 136, okay, 1360. So I'm going to come here and then I'm going to add a container, and this container is going to be my section. So I'm going to give it that class of section. And one thing is that when you give it a class, it changes the name. And not just that, I have to remember to put this section. And I'm going to add another thing. Now, I wish there was an option to hold down Control and just keep adding the way it is in workflow without this thing closing, because when I add it closes, I have to open it again, but then we don't have that yet. So this is going to be the container. This container, I'm going to give it a class of section container. And this section container, I want to give it a maximum width. So I will go to size, a max width. I want to give it, let's just create another one, CSS variables for it. So I'm just going to say side width. And that side width, I want it to be 1360 pixels. And I'm just going to add it under spacing and save. So we have that side width. And if you go to the variables, you could see under spacing that side width is added. We can reuse that variables for another thing. I also want to add under spacing. I want to add margin. So I'm going to go here. At everything I'm doing here, I want to use variables because I need them to be reusable. So I'm just going to add here. I'm going to say margin auto. And I'm just going to give it an auto here. Collection should also be spacing. Yep, save it. So I have a margin auto here, and then I'm going to come here and also give it a margin auto. Now, one thing with this is that if I want to give this a padding, there's no way for me to apply to all. Even if I use Control and hit, Shift hit, alternate hit, it doesn't apply. So since this is heavily inspired by Webflow, the way Webflow works is that if you do Control and hit, it's going to apply to the opposite side. If you use Shift and enter, it's going to apply to everywhere. I believe that all this is beta, so take note, this is a beta version, so this probably is going to be addressed. So if I preview, of course my content doesn't have any lines for me to know, but you see I already have that that gutter, okay, which I did not apply to my section. So my section size, I'm going to apply the gutter padding to the section, which is this and which is this. I got to say that the user experience using this spacing, I don't feel great about it. I remember when I was using calculated values, for example, if I go here and I want to have my gutter to be this, yeah. So a maximum size of 30 pixel and a minimum size of 20. And let's say I go back in to the variables and that gutter, and I just want to put it custom. Okay, so I've done that. Let's go back out. And so if we go back to the sizing, to the spacing, so you can see how it looks here, the clamp. So it doesn't really look nice. I think they should actually clamp it to the first few words, and that will make it look okay. And then when you hover on it, you see, granted, Webflow doesn't even allow this. Webflow doesn't allow calculated values in its field. It doesn't give you the option to put the calculated values. So you just keep using, rems and all that. But this, at least Oxygen allows it, which is a good thing. So next they have to find a way to deal with this. Just clamp it. They've clamped it, but clamp it so that the first word at least shows. And then maybe on hover, it shows. I think this should be a full height, okay? So I'm gonna go to the section, I'm gonna go to the size and spacing, I'm gonna go to the minimum height, and then I'm gonna use my dynamic viewport height. And then I'm gonna say 100. It's gonna give you my height, okay? And then for this, I want all this, I wanna display this as flex. This, I wanna centralize it. I think I wanna stretch it. So let's stretch everything, okay? So yeah, it's, I think, yeah, my bad. So this is supposed to be, the width here will be 100%. Okay, so I have that, and let's save that. For the background here, now, problem. So how do I style this? I want to put a background. So do I put it here? This is a hero. Now this is where the combo would really come in. So where you come in and add the create selector and just say hero. So you know that this is a hero section, and then you apply the background color. So I'm going to add a background color image. So these things need a little bit of, the contrast is really not good. I can't even see what is here. What is here? What is here? It's not clear. So we need to do better in that aspect. I'm going to put this, and nothing happens. It's nothing happens because I put that, nested hero, because I can't apply this to I can't apply this because this is a section class. I can't apply that. I need to apply it to the modifier, which obviously is not working. This is actually where you are going to use, the ID in a different circumstance, maybe in the old Oxygen. This is where you use it because you want to apply this hero section to just that, but the modifier class is not working, so I'm just going to remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and create another regular class, which is a hero, and then I'm going to add this background. It's not going to be a color, it's going to be an image. So I'm going to drop that, put that image there. So we have that. Okay, we have that image. All right, so our image looks just the way it is, and here I'm going to add a heading, which is going to be my H1, and I just want to give it an H heading class. Okay, so we look at this and we see that all the headings here have they have white. So do I do white except this one? So I'm really not going to do that. So I'm going to go to the hero. And then I will, let's look at this. So this is white, okay? So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go to my hero, and then I'm going to change the typography color to white, okay? Maybe I should just create a variable for that and just say white, okay? Yes, let's add a variable. Just say white, yep, and add it to the collection of color and save it. And then we have that white. So now I'm not applying this to the text. So I'm applying this to the hero section. So the typography. So anytime there's a text here, it's going to be white. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to just paste it here. And my heading, I want my heading typography font family to be, yep, I think I already did a font family there, which is, but the weight, for the heading should be like that, maybe 500. Okay. And then for this heading, I want to give it a maximum width. So I'm going to go to size and give it a maximum width of, let's say 5M. 5M, just gonna dial it there, so we have that maximum width there. And that size is sort of okay. They had a 96 pixel. We are using the font size 4 rem, which of course we think 5 rem would be good, but I don't just want 5 rem. So what if I go into the clamp calculator? You know what, so that we wouldn't waste time, I'm just going to use rem and wing it, you know, like that. So the next thing is we're going to add another text. So I just go here, add a text. I'm going to go here and add a button, but we don't have a button, we have a text link. Or you could have a link, container link, which is what you know as a wrapper link, depending on what you want to use to create your button. But I want to use a text link because it's just one element. I'm going to give this a class of button. And for that class, I'm going to go ahead and give the default styling. I don't want any text decoration. View product. So this is our button, but I'm just going to rename it to a button primary, button dash primary. Then so I'm gonna take away that, yeah, the text decoration is not there anymore. The font color is black, which is typography. We have a color which is want it to be black. Okay, so let's just add that. We're gonna add a new one, and then I'm just gonna call it black, and just gonna add it to color, save. So we have a font color black. I'm gonna go to the background, and the background, I'm going to give it a color. So let's add a color. I'm gonna call it primary. Okay, this is a color, and this color is going to be this color, which is this. Yep, and I'm gonna save that. So that color is primary, and we're gonna go to spacing, and I could just create a new variable. Okay, I'm gonna just say button no, so you have to click on this. Yep, I'm gonna say btn button y. Okay, button space y or x, and let's just make that 3 rem. We can always, yep, that's a lot. So I could actually go in here and adjust it. So then my spacing, so where is my button? So I added that in a default, so I can move that up to spacing, and then I could change that to 2 or 1.5. All right. Okay, so let's go back to our button. So you get the workflow. So I'm going to come here again and add that button. There's X there, and then you already see that I need to click out to be able to do something. So I'm going to add a different one under spacing. I'm going to call it, so the lines are very faint, you know, so it kind of makes it difficult. Now this should be in M. So when you're doing things that has to do with buttons and all that, that has a you want to put it in M. So this button here, I want to make it in M, okay, so that it will increase according to the font size. So so to move from here to where you were, normally you should click here to switch, but if I click it, I'm having an empty space, but this is still selected, which shouldn't be so. So I'm gonna go back there and just choose my button space Y. So I have my button, and I don't know if I can actually search for settings. No, I don't think I've seen the options here to search for settings. So I have to look for my border radius. My border radius, I want it to be 50 VW, and that works. And for my button and the width, color, style, I think everything else I can leave it like that. Typography, the weight, I think I like the weight to be. And then the font, I think I would like the font to be the same as the heading family font, which is that, which we could actually duplicate and give it a different name in case we want to change the button font. But for now, let's go with that. So I've created my button. So anytime that I add a new text element to the page and I give it the button class, we're going to have that. Okay, so that does it. And then we have the HTML text, which is this. So we're going to paste that. And my elements are overlapping for some reason, which I don't know. Should they? So let's look at this. So I have my heading here, I have this, and I have my button. So why are they overlapping? So I'm going to go to my section container, and then my display, I'm going to make it flex this direction. Okay, I guess that stops them from overlapping. And my gap, I'm going to choose my content gap. But my heading is taking up so much space, which I don't understand why. To understand why, I think I will have to look at the front end and see what the problem is. So obviously the button is spanning, and this heading has, yeah, that's an H1. So it has a default. Where did this come from? No, I didn't do this. I thought we did. I thought we agreed not to do this. So we don't want that. So we are going to, with our heading class, we are going to go to that spacing and then enforce 0, 0. Now our container display flex, we want to do it, align it like that. And another thing is that you can't actually see what is here until you hover on it. So we need some contrast work here. And one other thing I want to mention is if you wanted to reset something, let's say I wanted to reset this, just double click on it and it's going to reset. Okay, so 100%. It was. So now we have, we have our hero section, and of course our typography could be better in terms of the line height. So that line height, I'm just going to give it 130%, which is not 110. Why don't we just leave it at 100%? Okay, that looks better. And then here we also want to, so I'm going to give it a hero text, and then I am going to give it a maximum width. Go to size, I'm going to give it a maximum width of 5M. Let's move that, something like that. And hero text is going to be, now the problem with that is that the hero text, all these texts are the same size, which is like 20. So how do I give it a general class? Okay, so I'm going to give a general class of body text. Now I'm trying to show you the workflow with what we have, because we really don't have a way to set up the overall styling for the body. At least I've not seen it. So if there is something like that, then someone should point that to me. So the fonts for this, I think I would like to add a new variable, which will be under the collection of, I think I should create a new collection for that, but I want to have inter here, and that will be my body font. Okay, I'm gonna save that, and I have inter, and the size 20 pixels. So let's see, can we do 20 divided by 16? It's not going to work. If you want to change it to rem in Webflow, you just divide it by 16. It's going to change it to rem. So rem is 1. Okay, so I could just do 1.4 rem. 1.4 rem. Let's see, 20 divided by 16 is 1.25. So 1.25 rem. So that gives me that height. What is the height? The height should be regular. I can give this a 1.3 height. 1.3 is the same as 130%. It's just the same thing. So maybe just give it a little bit of spacing there. Save that. Now our content height, obviously, our content gap, obviously too small. All right. So I'm going to go to the content gap, and then I'm going to make adjustments here. Sorry, content gap. So if you want to increment it in decimals, you hold down alternate, okay, and increment it in decimal. So 2 rem is nice. Save it. Now this is not an Oxygen thing. If you're using the browser console, it's the same thing applies. So we've built that hero section, and yep. you build that hero section. So we have a site width, but the problem is we're having issues with this text. It's not showing up. So the question is, why is this not showing up? Why is my font not showing? So color black. So we use black, and this is so 000. Okay, so that's a mistake from us, but it's not also reflecting here. So we're going to go there, and under the color, the black was 4 zeros, which is wrong. All right. So the hover style for the button, let's say if we want to add a hover style for the button, I can come here to primary and I go to hover, and I go to the color, background, okay, and let's say primary hover. So I'm gonna click there, try hover, and then I could just say orange, maybe black. That's the background, and then the typography, the color, we'll just use white. Okay, so we'll just use white. So when we hover on it like that, and how do we deal with the we have the effects, the transition. So I'm going to add a transition. You could add multiple transitions for multiple properties. So you could choose a property. You cannot only add one per time. Okay, so I have opacity here, which is not what I wanted, but I'm going to just change that to background. Okay, so you have background, and then you could add another one, and I want to change it to color. All right, so you can actually add one per time. So you have background, you have color, you want to add transform, you could add it. So you can actually add multiple. You can't just write background, comma, and all that the way you would want, but you can add them, and you could reorder them, you know. So you have the different transitions here. I don't know if I should have been given just a space to type out the way I want. Okay, maybe it would have been faster, or maybe an option to choose all, which here there is an option to choose all, definitely. So I can remove that, but then that is not very performant. So do that. Undo, that leads me to one thing. So one thing I noticed about the undo was that, let's say I wanted to change the background of this hero section, or let's take a text, for example. I want to change the color of this text, and then I go here, color, and then I move. Notice I'm moving. The undo actually records all that movement. So when I click undo, you see it undoes it in gradual, I don't even know what to call it. Like it keeps, like if you go to here, you could see that it's recording every single movement that I did in that color, you know, color thing, you know, and then the color swatch, every single movement. So it just keeps on doing every single step. I think that is a bug. Yeah, so it should just record the last step, you know, once I remove my hand. So you can see how every gradual step, so I have to undo it all the way till I get that's kind of like a workflow. So what I noticed is that no global styling for the element, no global styling for this. Let's go ahead and just do this section. Okay, now because of that, I want to show you one thing that is new here. So I'm going to duplicate this and remove all of this because I want that section and this. So we have this, and I'm going to add text, which is going to be my H2. And for the H2, I didn't have any styling. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to create my heading. I'm just going to still give it my heading class because they're basically the same size. You know, all the text here, the H1 and the H2 have the same size. So we're going to maintain the same class. Ideally, we should have a different class. So now I can just duplicate this and just say and call it H2. And I can go ahead to delete or remove. Don't delete. Delete would remove it from the site, remove it from that element. So we have the H2 here, and I'm going to go ahead and say crowd favorite. All right. And I'm going to remove the hero section from this. So yeah, so some issues here. So definitely this container is supposed to be 100%. Section container is supposed to be 100% height. Okay, so the size of 100% height, which is not working. So I'm going to just double click that to remove, but then I could go to the flex child and grow one. Okay, you can go to the layout. It's already set to display flex, which I can bring it to the center. So we have that here. Okay, so we have that, and then we're going to add another container, and then we're going to have these cards. So I'm going to go ahead and add containers, and I'm going to give it a class of section container, and stuff are not really working the way I expect, of course. So for this particular section, now I don't want it to be 100% height, which is where the mistake we made here. So the minimum height that was 100%, I'm going to remove it from there, and then I'm going to go back to the section container, sorry, the section here, and then apply that to the hero, not the section. Okay, so these are things that if you take time, you wouldn't have to go back. Okay, or we could use the dynamic value. Okay, so the section part Y, I didn't put that because I didn't really see. So the section part Y section, so we didn't have a section part. Yeah, we had. So there I'm introducing that here, up and down. Section part Y. So yep, okay, we didn't apply that. All right, now I'm gonna add a container, and then this is gonna be my card. I'm just gonna call that card simply. And this is what we want to build. This card has an image and then two text on top of the image. I'm going to drop an image inside, and then I'm going to select that image, and then I'm going to drop a text inside. So perhaps I'm just going to drop another container that will have two text inside it. I'm going to do this, and then I'm just going to call this card text wrap. Okay, and I'm going to give that a background color of the primary so that it's going to cover this. So now what we want is we want this text wrap to be on top of this image, but before then, let's add our text. So I'm going to add a text. This is going to be my card text, and that card text is going to be white, so the color is going to be white. But then because of contrast, we are not going to follow that, so we're going to choose black instead. So we have codes. Just going to write there, codes, things like this. You use dynamic data. I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to give it call it something else like a number. All right, so I'm going to select that card wrap. I'm going to go to layout. It's going to be flex, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to space apart. So I'm just going to double click that. Double clicking it will expand. If you use a Figma, you'll know that if you double click it, it moves it to the edge. And then I will just click this little arrow here to select the parent. Supposed to select, yeah, no, I'm still on that card. I'm going to give it a spacing. So I'm going to give it a little padding of, let's say, 0.2 rem. Nope. Use that alternate. Maybe 1 rem is good. And then I wish I could just apply it to both of them at the same time. And then the top, the same thing, maybe 0.5 rem. And then the bottom, 0.5 rem. Okay, so I have that. Now, how do I move this on top of this? Because I don't want this image to be a background, so I'm going to select this card. I'm going to go to position. I'm going to position it relative. I'm going to come back to this image, and then I'm going to go to, now I can't style this image, so I have to give it a class of card image, and then I can go to position and position it absolute. Whoa. Okay, so this card didn't have any width or height, so and this text has gone behind to hide. So to bring this text forward, we need to, you could change the z-index, but when something is absolutely positioned, since this is static, it's going to be behind. So you just go to position relative, and then it's going to come to the front. So what do we do? Since we're going to have this as a card inside this section container, so I'm going to set this to display grid. Oh no, the section container needs to have so these are the challenges trying to work your way around there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this section container because we don't want to use it to style individual containers. So I'm going to add a regular container. So I'm just going to say container 1. Like I'm just going to choose that, and then I'm going to display it grid, and I want it to be columns 3. Okay, so let's select this. Interesting. The card, and the layout is going to be flex box like that, and this is going to be at the bottom. What am I choosing? This is the card, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to give this a minimum height of, let's say, 250 pixels. Okay, the card probably 350, and and for the image, we just want to make the image 100% width and then 100% height. And of course, the image field. So this is image. So we should have something like the fit, yeah, which is cover. Okay. And the position, I wanted to, you can move the position around. Okay. Up like that. For this one, the width also has to be 100%. I think we need the card to be a little bit taller. 400. I can go ahead and just duplicate this card into 3. But I'm not going to do that. So before I duplicate it, I want to change this card to a component. So component is something that has been introduced into Oxygen. And then what would component, now this card is now a component. What can you do with it? So let's save this, and then we can go ahead and edit a component. The component is a reusable item that shares similar HTML structure, but you can actually modify the content at different instances of the same thing. So I'm going to edit this, and it just opens up a new window. Now, to work with components, you will have to create properties for them. So I'm going to start by creating a property for this. All the properties you can create are highlighted in purple here. So from, where do you want to take this from, the media library or the URL? I could create a property for it. Click once, then click the arrow and just say from or image source. Okay, and it's going to create a property key. You can change this, but I don't really know the use case of this for now. And then I've created a property for that image source. The media, you're going to choose the URL. So click that, and then image URL. Close that, and then I'm going to come to the alt text. I'm going to create a URL property for it. I'm going to just call it alt, and then I'm going to close that. And then you want a lazy load, you can actually create a property for that. So lazy load, create a property for that, and that's it for that. And then I can come here and create a property for this text and just say text content, and that's all for the text. I can come here also and create a property for this text, so that could be maybe the text unit content. I'll give it a name that makes sense. We're in a hurry here, just breezing through. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go back to this. And so we have this card as a component, so I can duplicate it and duplicate it. And right now, so if I want to change this, I can come here. I have the ability to change the image URL here. So I can come here and change this to a different image. And then I can come here. You don't even need to come here. It's just, everything is here, okay? The text content, I could just call this glasses. And then the text unit, I could change this to 02. And it's just going to change there. Click on this, choose a new. So I'm just going to choose this. Okay. And then here, I just say hood, and this is going to be 03. So you can see that I have these components where I can edit it in one place. So let's say I wanted to add something new to this component, and I just go to edit component. Let's save this. and it takes me into the component. I wanted to add something different. So in the structure panel, let's say I wanted to add a button. So I decide to come here and add a button, and of course give it my button class. That button is definitely behind, so I can go and just make it relative to bring it to the top. Okay, so maybe I want to add a button at the here. Yeah. Let's give it a z-index of 1. So I want to add a button there, and of course the card, I need to gap it out. So just gap this out with a gap of, let's say, 2 rem, and also perhaps maybe padding. Okay, let's just say 1 rem of padding all around. I can't just apply to all, so that's still a bummer. All right, so let's say that's the changes we want to make to that component. And instead of doing it one after the other, add a button in one and add a button in the second one, add a button in the third one, you see that we do that and it's going to reflect on all of them. And then for these, is all of them say click here. So I could just go ahead, you know, and I could just go ahead and create properties for those buttons also. And so for this button, I could create a property for it and just call it button text. And that's all. So this now has a property called button text. And then I have another property called button URL. And then I can save this and then go back to where I was. And I can come here and then I can just learn about codes. And then come here and say learn about classes. Come here and say learn about food. All right. So that is component. For some reason, our button is not working properly. So what happened? So we had a button and the hover state was that the color, typographic color, should be white. So we added the variable white. Okay. All right, we must have missed that somewhere. So the component are a big thing. It's something really new that has come to Oxygen 6. And we are not yet looking at the header builder, which is part of the Breakdance elements for Oxygen. We're not looking at the menu. If you know Breakdance, you know that Breakdance has one of the best menu builders. The menu is really so good. So no need to go into all that right now. Maybe subsequent videos, we're going to do a full site build, bring in the Breakdance elements, which are awesome. And then we build something. But what do I think about this? My thoughts. So the way I feel about this is sort of mixed, to be honest. I'm excited about it. I like the fact that new things are being brought. Now, so we had Oxygen, and now we have a new Oxygen. There is something that made Oxygen Oxygen. There's something that made people love Oxygen. And I feel that if you want to do a new Oxygen, that you don't take away the things that made people love Oxygen. You just simply add what people ask for. You know, for example, out of the box, it feels like Oxygen 6 is living in the shadow of Breakdance. That is not something that I personally like. I want Oxygen to have its own identity, but it has, for example, if I wanted to do dynamic data, I have a post loop builder. I have a repeater field, meaning that I'll need to go and choose a block. You know, this is the way Breakdance works. You go choose a block. Perhaps it has its own advantage, which means that if you ever want to edit that block or if you ever want to edit that component, you don't need to open the builder. You could just go to that component and work on it. This is a debatable issue, but my preference is I like the way Oxygen Repeater was. But if we're going to have a loop builder within the new Oxygen, I would like it to feel a bit more modern. You build it right here. You just loop it. That means you don't have, let's say, if I come to the front end and I refresh this, that means you don't have, you see, you don't have BDE repeater element wrapping every single thing. You just have a clean output. Let's say let's say I was using a repeater for this, and I have, this is all I want to see. I want to see a clean output. I don't want to see something being wrapped inside a repeater element. I want to see a clean output. You know, other builders have done it. If you're going to make oxygen, then it has to be done. It might be a lot of work. It has to be done. Another thing, I don't want to see, it's three separate things. I don't want to see post loop builder, repeater field, term loop builder. Personally, I don't want to see that. It's great, they work fine, but I want to have a unified loop element that can query repeater fields, that can query any kind of post, that can query the terms. It's not a new thing. The excuse that this couldn't be done in Oxygen because it was built on a framework that gave them limitation is no longer here. So there is no excuse right now. Oxygen doesn't have to be like Breakdance in any way. This is Breakdance. This is not Oxygen. So I think that Oxygen should have its own identity. I think Oxygen should have its own header builder. I think Oxygen should have its own menu builder where I build the menu out using the different components that you've given to me. That is the way I feel about Oxygen. I will never feel like I'm using Oxygen if I have to depend on Breakdance elements. Breakdance elements should just be a nice to have. They shouldn't be a must have for Oxygen. That's what I think. And I also think that, you know, if we want to follow workflow, we really have to make it good, you know. So I pointed out something here. We can apply to all. We can apply to the opposite for now. The contrast ratio in some of these things are really not there. The combo class is there, but it's not working. And then we don't have global styles. So in Webflow, if you have, then we don't have our elements. We want a starting point. We want the section element and the inner container that is takes the site width. We want those starting elements. I want to be able to put a section, and I drop in a section, and in the structure panel, I see my section and the section container. I want to see them. I want to be able to manipulate them. These are things that we need. These things were good. We want to have a global style for headings. There is no global style anyway for the body style. What fonts do I want my overall body to be? I want to be able to have that. I want to be able to style. Okay, let's see. So we're looking at Webflow. If I add, let's say, Webflow has a section element anyway, but I don't think that they are doing it well. Add a heading element, which is the H1. So you see, Webflow has an HTML tag class, all heading, that you can style. So that means it gives you the ability to style all the heading, okay? So what I want to say is if I change this tag to heading 2, and I come back here, I want to see all heading 2 tags. You see, if I change this tag to heading 3, and I come here, I want to be able to style all the 3. I don't want to add a class to it because then I will always have to add a class to each thing. So these are the kind of things that we want to see. So if this is heavily inspired by Webflow, then make the best of it. Like I said, they've done a great job in making sure that we have this. We can put, you know, clamp functions. Webflow doesn't allow that. You can't even do it. You can't. If you come here, you can add a clamp. There is no custom. Even auto, nothing. You can't add a clamp. It's not going to agree for you to add it. So, which is a bad thing. For example, if I put 20 here, hold down shift and hit, it's going to apply the 20 to everywhere. Let's say if I put 10 here, and then I hold down alternate and hit, it's going to apply to the opposite side. You know, those are kind of things that we like to see. And then you can see the contrast in the thing. So I wanted to display as flex. You can see the dot, you can see everything. You don't have to apply to it. Like you can see the contrast, you can see the dot, everything is showing. So those are the kind of, actually I had to open Webflow because it's obvious that this, you see, it's very similar. You know, the contrast is really good here. The contrast not so good here. So we need better contrast with the way things are. I want to be able to see things properly. So that's it. So the final words on this is a great, you know, a great move. I like it. I like the move. I like the fact that we have variables. I love that. Now we don't even have a style sheet. Another thing I want to look at is we have what we call the JavaScript code, right? JavaScript code, and then we have the CSS code, the HTML code. They are we have them different. Okay, while that is good, I like the fact that it's because sometimes all you just want to do is you just want to put a CSS code. So you don't want to have that unified code block. Then the other ones are empty. which is good. But what if I want the three at once? I want the ability to be able to have the unified. I want that option to be there, because I build components, I build templates for others. And sometimes I want everything to be, I don't want three separate. I want everything to be in one code block. So the way Oxygen was, where we had a good coding experience, I want that too in this Oxygen. So if I put in a JavaScript code, okay, let's say I put in a JavaScript code, and then I can't, no syntax, like nothing, no syntax highlighting, nothing. I want that. I can't search and replace inside there. You put in you don't even have auto close. Like I can't even say if, no auto close, if this, nothing is auto closing. It's just like in a notepad. We want a great coding experience. Like the previous Oxygen, we want a good code block where we can write codes in Oxygen. So that is what we want. And then the things that we already have, like the components, we need it to get better. We need to have variations in components. So like in Figma, where you can create a button, or you create a particular component, and you have the option not just to choose another component, but within that component you want to choose different variations. So if I go ahead to edit this component, I should have the option to create a separate instance of this component. So I should be able to, this is a card, I should be able to right click and create an instance. So that instance would essentially duplicate it, but it's not a different component. See, it must have single root tag there, but then yep, now that is the thing. So we want to be able to have an instance where we name it as a variation of this. So when we come over to these, don't you just love how fast these things are loading? When we come over to this, we can select this and then select a variation for it. So that would be great to have. So these are my thoughts concerning Oxygen. We don't want to live, we Oxygen users, we don't want to live in the shadow of Breakdance. As great as Breakdance is, I love Breakdance. I advertise for Breakdance. I love it. I use it and I like the workflow. It's for people that would prefer not to use builders like Oxygen and Bricks. But if you're going to give us Oxygen, Oxygen should not live in the shadow of Breakdance. Okay, so put in the comment section what you think about the new Oxygen. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation right there. And I understand that this is a beta version, and the team is going to probably put into work what we have said. It's going to be a lot of work for them, but I think in the end it's going to be worth it. It's going to be good for both Breakdance and Oxygen if they can make Oxygen very unique. All right, until next time, see you. Bye.